Good morning, and thank you for joining us for our introduction to ECM and OnBase, or kind of our 101 course to get our business transformation webinar series started. We're going to keep things very basic, kind of looking at a conceptual framework or 6 categories that we use to explain the basics of ECM and content services and all of the different terms that we use within our industry. Then we're going to focus on kind of how do you get started with a project and what are the tools that you have available to start thinking about transforming the way that you do business. And then finally, we'll round out our time with a couple of examples of how our clients are using OnBase today. One kind of focused in a commercial business, another in the insurance industry, and finally, one example for our government folks that may be on the line as well. So hopefully we'll have a tangible example for everybody on the line as we close out our presentation today. So as I mentioned, to get started, I really want to kind of just talk about what is ECM and what does that term mean, along with all of the other terms that you'll hear as you start researching your different solution options and looking at how you can manage content and processes more effectively. We change the term that's used periodically, and most recently, ECM has changed into content services as well. So what is ECM and what is content services? What do these terms mean and how can they help you in your organization? So just to get started, I wanted to provide you guys a kind of 5,000 foot view of what the OnBase solution can provide companies, along with what does that term mean to us here at Naviant. So regardless of the name that you put on it, whether it's enterprise content management, ECM, or content services, really what our focus here at Naviant is to help you pull the right tools out of your OnBase toolkit to help build in process efficiencies and drive your business forward. So that means helping get rid of paper and go paperless, helping manage your processes more electronically and more efficiently. And the way that we do that is by using the tools that are up on this screen here. So as you can see across the top, there are specific industry focuses in healthcare, government, financial services, insurance, higher education, and then also this commercial bucket that fills, retail, transportation, manufacturing, food and beverage. So really OnBase as a solution can span across different industries as well as across your entire organization to help you manage the processes and the content that you have within your organization. So the first part of our time together is going to be focusing in on these 6 categories or this conceptual framework that I mentioned earlier. We like to break down ECM and OnBase into these different categories because there's a lot of potential held within this one solution when we start talking about OnBase. And again, what makes up that content services or ECM platform really comes down to these 4 areas of focus and how information moves across your organization. So when you start to evaluate different solutions and look at how an ECM platform might be able to help you in your organization, you really want to focus on finding a platform that allows you to manage that content. So, most simplistically, paper and emails and faxes, along with all of the processes that are driven by that content. And then taking a step kind of a little bit further and looking at the information or the data that's on that paper or that email and that fax, and driving casework that is a little bit more complicated and dynamic than a simple process that's driven by a piece of paper. So I know that's still a little vague, and I hope when we dig into these 6 pillars of ECM, that will help a little bit as well. So we're going to hone in on each one of these areas, first looking at capture, then managing your information after it's in the system. How do we provide access to that information to the right folks within your organization? How can you integrate your OnBase solution with different applications to extend those capabilities further? What tools are there for you to measure your success and complete some reporting? And then finally, how do you store that information and make sure that it's safe and that you have access to all of the information for the right amount of time? Real quickly before we dive into those categories, hopefully as we're going through this, you can use the mnemonic device of chocolate muffins are in my stomach to remember those 6 different categories. So as you're thinking of OnBase, you can look at this little girl, have her be your image that helps you remember these 6 categories after today. So first off, we're going to start by talking about capture and capturing your documents, and as I mentioned, extending that capture beyond just physical paper to also the data that you'd like to hold within your system and having that all in one place. Traditionally, when we talk about capture, folks tend to think about scanning in documents into a system and having access to them electronically, which is certainly where our industry started. But over the course of the last 30 years, OnBase and Naviant have really pushed the boundaries of what that traditional capture looks like. And now it's much more than bringing in those physical documents to also pulling in data streams from other third-party applications, pulling in faxes and emails directly as they're coming into your organization, being able to snap a picture on your mobile phone and upload it into an expense report and keep your processes moving even if you're not in the office. What really starts to separate that traditional data capture from what we do today is this idea of automated data capture that you can see around the circle of that central graphic. And when we start to look at what really drives efficiencies and transforms businesses, this automated data capture and using a tool called optical character recognition, or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as OCR, is what really can transform an organization because it takes the information that's directly on those documents that you're bringing into the system, regardless of how they're ingested, and has the computer do that kind of initial keying of information and pulling out the data that is central to your business and allowing you to free up your staff from having to sit at a keyboard and type in information into the system. This automated data capture allows you to bring in an accounts payable invoice and pull off the invoice information such as total dollar amount and date and vendor information without anybody having to interact with that document. Or in an insurance scenario, a claim coming in, you can pull off that pertinent information to start the process going and get it moving as quickly as possible. Once you have your information within your OnBase system, that's kind of the first hurdle, but the key to an OnBase system and really the efficiencies that you can find within your organization come from managing your documents and your processes all in this one application. OnBase has, again, these capabilities to manage your content and information as well as your processes and data all in one place. So most simplistically, when we look at managing documents and data, I like to say that OnBase gives you the tools to do anything that you would do with a physical piece of paper within your organization electronically. So if you and your accounting department use a yellow highlighter to call something out, or your HR department likes to put sticky notes on interview guides with their thoughts as they're going through them, you can still complete all of that work, those highlights, those sticky notes, any annotations that you'd like to put onto a document within the system. You can also staple documents together. We can enhance relationships between documents by tagging them as related items. And it really gives you a lot of freedom to manage your documents the same way that you are now and ease in that transition into a paperless environment. We're going to dive a little deeper into process and data management here and talk specifically about some of the tools that OnBase has for managing your information. So again, going back to kind of what our industry is known for traditionally, workflow is a key component of any ECM solution or content services solution. With workflow, you're not physically driving a process with a piece of paper moving from desk to desk within the organization anymore. Instead, we're able to use logic and rules within a system to take that piece of paper and route it electronically for you. So when you start to think of processes that could potentially be automated by workflow, we're thinking of very linear processes that start at point A and based off of a specific decision point are routed to point B and on to point C. Again, we could go from A to B over to D if a different decision is made, but we're thinking of very linear and logical processes that the computer can use rules to route electronically for you. Oftentimes, workflow is what we find provides the hugest efficiency gains for our clients, because there's a lot of processes that when you start to think about it, we don't manage them very effectively within our organization because we just aren't utilizing the tools that are available. So rather than picking up a file folder and bringing it to somebody's desk, we can do all of that electronically. Up on the screen, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, this is the newest version of OnBase. This is version 17. And as you can see, it's got a very similar look and feel to Microsoft Office. So across the board, outline, or across the top of the screen, you can see outlined in orange, there's a ribbon bar that's very similar to Microsoft Suite products with large buttons that allow you to complete tasks. And down below here, we have our workflow interface open. You can see in this example that I have an invoice on the screen, and having that image available allows you to drive a lot of decision making much quicker. From this screen, I could also grab any related items that might be associated with this. So say this was a PO invoice, I could pull up that purchase order. I could bring along a packing slip that may be associated. And then up on the top of the screen there, you can see all of those large task buttons that I have that are calls to action for whoever's interacting with this specific document. So I can see that I might be able to submit this for approval. I could reject it, send it on to a different workflow queue for somebody to manage an exception. And all of those tasks are right at the tip of my fingertips within this user interface. Another option for tools that are available within OnBase that really help kind of manage your processes and your information more effectively is looking at using electronic forms to expedite the processes that you have within your organization. A lot of times when we're talking to clients, one of their biggest hurdles is looking at how they might be able to bypass that capture or bypass the information that comes in on paper formats. So by using electronic forms, we can input data directly into OnBase that allows you to instantly trigger the submission of something and kick off a process. So there's a number of different options of how you can set up electronic forms, but these forms can be used to make sure that required information is included. We can do mathematical computations on there. We can check and validate information from third-party systems. So when we're looking at inputting data, these electronic forms are another really great way for you to be able to manage processes, specifically on the front end of the process and kicking that off. Another tool that OnBase has for managing your information is specific to policies and procedures in the HR side of things, or just kind of across the organization. So this tool is called Document Knowledge Transfer, and it's a really fancy way of saying it gives you the ability to pass on documents and track whether your employees have read them and acknowledged that they've received that information. So in this scenario, you would have an administrator that creates reading groups. So we can have different reading groups. So say your IT team has different policies and procedures that they need to acknowledge than your accounting team. You can have a reading group that spans across the entire organization and then also use this same tool to communicate with smaller groups of folks across the organization. Once that information has been shared with them, you can track who's viewed it, who may be delinquent with it. We can associate tests along with it. So say you have your employee handbook had a couple of changes and you want to make sure that your employees have actually read those pages. You could put one question at the end of acknowledgement to ensure that they comprehended what they were reading or make sure that they did, in fact, read the document. Specifically, again, we see a lot of the use of this within the HR department and sharing those kind of vital information or those vital documents and information with your team. And another tool that I think is really cool, and we're seeing some great things happen with in the insurance industry, and also on contract management and within legal departments, is this idea of being able to automate the creation and the composition of documents. OnBase has made some huge advancements in what we call their customer communication management side of the application recently. And the key component for this is being able to create documents that have specific legal language in them and directly from templates, and be able to merge different application or information from different applications into those documents and pass them on, knowing that you've met all of your compliance regulations and that you have the appropriate language in those documents. So up on the screen, you can see you'd start with a Word template that has all of that key information in it. You can pull in information from, say, in the insurance industry, your policy management system, to populate the policyholder and all of their key information. Your user could enter in the date and apply a signature to the document so that the person receiving it knows who created the document for them. And we can also pull in information from other areas within OnBase. So again, in an insurance example, say we are using this to acknowledge the receipt of a claim. We can pull in that information from that third-party system for who the participant is. We can put in the date and then use that electronic form that we filled out at the beginning of the process to input fields within the document specific to that claim. We can then take this document and send it out electronically, pass it on to a mail service that may physically mail these documents out, and then hold that within OnBase as a record to manage the entire process. The last kind of management tool that I want to talk about today is WorkView or case management. And this is a little bit of a different tool than workflow because it allows us to manage much more dynamic processes. So when we start thinking about the types of the types of processes that we would automate using WorkView, we want to look at things that require a knowledge worker to be at the center of the process. So if you have employees building cases, that term case has a lot of different definitions across industry lines, but really what we're looking at is a collection of documents, maybe images, voice recordings, emails that all need a central knowledge worker to make decisions on. So really we're focusing on bringing all of the information into one place so that that employee has the freedom to jump from step A over to step Z if need be to manage the process, or go from A to G and then over to Z, and really manage it based off of their knowledge and their specific set of decision-making capabilities that we can't automate with a computer. Up on the screen right now, I have, again, version 17 of OnBase with a case management example. In this example, I have a vendor management solution up on the screen, and along the left-hand side there, outlined in orange, you can see this ribbon allows me to quickly access filters or groupings of different types of documents and data. So once I've selected an option of what this filter is over here in these pre-configured options, over on the screen, I'm going to, on the right-hand side of the screen, I'll receive a hit list of the different options that are available for all of my vendors. So this is a list of my different vendors, and I can easily choose and double-click and open up a case. And again, as I mentioned, a WorkView solution or a case management solution focuses on bringing all of the information that you need into one specific area. So you can see here across the top there, outlined in orange, I have a number of different tabs that allow me to switch from tab to tab to get information about this specific vendor in this scenario. So office supply warehouse, I have their general information on this page. I could click over to the products page to see what they provide my organization. I could view the specific contracts that are held within OnBase. I could then interact with third-party applications to pull in further data or other documents as well. And again, the key focus of these applications is to provide that 360-degree view of information that your team needs to make decisions. So rather than having to jump from application to application to get this information, you're able to stay in one central place to make your decisions, view your documents, access data. In a claim scenario, you may have photos coming in from an accident along with a string of correspondence and emails coming from the client to then tell you about what happened in the scenario. And you need to have somebody at the center of that information making decisions of how to process that claim. This 360-degree view of information allows for your workers to make smarter decisions that are informed much faster. Again, coming back to this example of case management, really looking at the benefits of having this case management solution rolled into an ECM solution this is unique in the industry because this case management solution is content aware. Data records are linked directly to documents and other content held within the OnBase repository. And this allows you to easily see related documents. And in this screenshot, you can see I have a folder view on the side that allows me to dig into Office Supply Warehouse, look specifically at their incident reports, and get access to that electronic document or that electronic form that I used to start that incident report at the very beginning. The next two categories that we want to talk about are access and integrate. And I like to talk about these two kind of linked hand in hand together because realistically, and the way our world works, is one of the most frequent ways that we provide access to OnBase is through integrations with other applications. Oftentimes, we feel very, very successful when our clients might not even realize that they're using OnBase. They just think that they had an upgrade to Outlook that provided access to all of the information that they need, or their policy admin solution got a little bit better with this new key that I can hit to bring up documents. We can provide access to users across a number of different platforms, and the first of which is, personalizing their user experience by providing specific home pages and options of how they access information. So OnBase is available directly on a user's workstation by having an OnBase client available, but we can also access it through the web client or through, again, those integrations with other applications. Oftentimes in the accounting world, we see tight integrations between ERP systems and OnBase, allowing folks that live and breathe in their ERP system to have access to the documents that are stored within OnBase. We can also extend access out to mobile devices. Back at the very beginning, I mentioned being able to take pictures from your iPhone or your iPad or your Android device and upload those directly into OnBase. This opens up a lot of freedom for folks that may be traveling and need to keep processes moving even if they're not physically in the office. Kind of going off of that same realm, we can also provide offline access to documents. So for, the scenario where you have an executive that needs to review a contract, but they're getting onto a plane, they can download that document, take it offline, interact with it the same way that they would live within an OnBase system, make changes, add comments, approve the document. And once they get off of that flight and their device is back hooked up to the internet, we can sync those two records, make sure that nobody had access to change or do anything to that document while they were reviewing it offline, and keep the process moving even if we don't have access to the internet. And finally, we can extend access to OnBase to folks outside of the organization as well. So we can look at extending that access off to third-party applications through portals, interacting with your constituents and or customers in a number of different ways. And then Up on the screen here, I have a specific screen that you can set up. It's called our home pages. It's a tiled-based home screen that users can set up to allow them to access documents or workflow queues, as well as reporting dashboards. We can access those documents again directly from the user interface here and retrieve documents. This is kind of our standard way that folks gain access to OnBase, is by using the Unity client, which is up on the screen. And you can see on this screen, it's kind of packed full because I tried to fit as much into the screenshot as I could. But you can see document retrieval. You select what you're looking for. It will bring up a hit list, very similar to what we discussed with a case management application. You're able to view that document and all of the associated data with it, all within one screen. I mentioned web access as well. This is what we call the web client. So it has a very similar look and feel to the access that's provided directly within the Unity client, but it provides much more flexibility for folks that may be accessing OnBase through a Mac computer or don't have a desktop application of OnBase. It just frees up that ability to access documents much quicker. One of our main integrations is through Microsoft Outlook. And so you can see up in that ribbon bar, there is an OnBase tab that allows you to upload documents, interact with workflow, and we are able to integrate directly within Outlook. And as I mentioned, sometimes people don't even realize that it's a secondary add-on that's helping them complete their work. Over here on the right-hand side, you can see the workflow task pane that's enabled directly within the email notification. I can view the primary document. I can view all of the related items that I might need to make this hiring decision in this example, and then quickly make my decision and either hire or reject the application directly from this email. I mentioned that there are mobile applications available, and this is just a couple of the screenshots from the iPhone integration. But as you can see, you can look up documents, interact with workflow, take pictures of a receipt to attach to an expense report, all directly within that interface as well. We could have an entire day, and I know we have, talking about the different integration options within OnBase. But when you look at the tools that are available, we have kind of the full gamut of screen level integrations that allow you to just share data at a screen level with a click of a button between applications, all the way to very deep purpose-built integrations between applications with OnBase, such as Guidewire in the insurance industry, and SAP for AP folks, Workday, and the HR department. Highland has very robust integration tools that allow us to just extend the capabilities of those other applications and help manage processes much more effectively across, the full solution that you have available. The next category that I want to talk about is looking at measure or reporting on your information. So when we start to look at the different options that are available with the reporting dashboards tool that I'm going to show in just a moment, you're able to interact with your live data and monitor your business insights directly from within OnBase. You're able to report on historical data, get access to reports that pull in data feeds from third-party applications. And then natively within OnBase, there is always a full audit trail and history of every touch or interaction that's taken place with a document within the system. Really, when we start to look at this measure category, it's where ECM starts to solve visibility problems for organizations, and really gives you the ability to hold your team accountable and make sure that you're meeting your service level agreements. This is just a very high level reporting dashboard that's looking specifically at invoice processing. But as you can see, there are a lot of different options of how you report on your data, looking at where your bottlenecks might be and how you can make improvements and adjustments in real time. Most recently in version 17, the reporting dashboards capability has been pushed onto the web client as well. So I just wanted to bring up the same dashboard from that web client. And this is what you would see if you logged in from any browser, whether it be Internet Explorer, Chrome, Safari. You have access to the exact same reports that you're able to slice and dice data in different ways. And the last category that I want to touch on is I always say, is the least sexy of the 6 categories, but it is probably one of the most important, if not the most important, for organizations in this day and age. And that's storing and making sure that your data is protected. OnBase is all about providing access to the right people at the right time, but part of that mission also means making sure that your data is protected and that you have the right storage and encryption in place so that only the people that you want access to have access. So really looking at the tools that make in this category that store and protect and manage retention on your documents. One of the big things that falls into this category is managing the retention of your documents so that not only do you have access to everything that you need, but when you have hit a retention date and you no longer need that information or that data, that we purge it and that you're not opening yourself up to risk of having extra data that you don't need within your system. So now that you have kind of the basics and the different tools that make up an OnBase solution, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how do you get started. And I think the most important question that you should ask is, where's the information that your employees need? And the reason that this is an important question to ask is when you start making a list, suddenly you realize you've got information scattered across your organization, whether that's in file folders or email inboxes, file shares. And so I think this is a really great way for organizations to spot the opportunity for more efficiency. When you start to see things like large volumes of paper, we've walked into organizations where desks are piled high and their only reporting metric is being able to measure how tall the stack of paper is, and they have an equation that tells them how long it's going to take them to make it through that work. That means that there's an opportunity for you to do things better. When we see multi-step processes, again, especially when they're centered around a document or a specific piece of paper, workflow is going to provide you efficiencies and productivity that having those multi-step processes scattered or being managed by email per se is not very effective. When you have lack of visibility and consistency within processes, again, that's another large red flag to us that there is an opportunity for workflow to come in, help provide that visibility, manage your process with much more consistent steps, and also give you the ability to then report on that and have accountability. And then an opportunity, again, going back to looking at case management applications, when you have decisions that need to be made where folks are searching out a specific spreadsheet or going through a file share to get information or hopping from one application to another to try and get a full picture of that case, you have an opportunity to potentially leverage an ECM tool and build in those efficiencies. When we start talking again about how to get started and where to go, good news is you're all in the right place right now. We love to talk about process and ECM and your documents and your data, and we are more than willing to sit down and just have a conversation and understand your business. Our consultants and our team have over 30 years of experience within this industry, starting back when it was, strictly just electronic filing cabinets, all the way now to having conversations about the OCR and data capture and efficient processes and really revolutionizing the way that you do business. Here at Naviant, we are a financially strong company focused on growth with a presence both in the US and across the world. And here in Verona, we have a dedicated customer care group that can help you manage your solution and manage your ongoing training to become self-sufficient and manage your application appropriately. I think our 98% customer retention really speaks volumes to the partnership that you could potentially have with Naviant and the difference that it could make within your organization. Navient really has a three-pronged approach to how we implement OnBase solutions and kind of tackle process improvement within organizations. And these three pillars are really what makes us different. Focusing upfront on the way that you do your process allows us to design a solution using OnBase that's going to solve your problems. When you are able to look at business processes on the front end and make small tweaks to the process before you implement the technology, all of a sudden you see the results much greater at the end, rather than just trying to bring in a kind of set solution and having your organization work around it and change your processes to adapt to the technology. This process first methodology that we have allows us to implement technology solutions that are right for you and your organization and custom to your processes and requirements. Our consulting approach also gives us the opportunity to help you with your organizational change and really looking at how you do business now and how we can help you bridge that gap into the future and not hit any speed bumps as we manage that change. We would be naive not to recognize that change is difficult and that it takes organizations a while to fully embrace new technology and new processes. But when you work with a consultant on the front end and focus on the business process before the technology, it eases in that transition and it makes for a much smoother solution implementation and go live. And then we also focus on continuous process improvement and working with our partners beyond the initial go live date. This is incredibly important to us in making sure that you can become as self-sufficient and continue to grow your solution into the future. And we do this by offering events like our annual summit every year in the fall. And this year it's going to be in Madison at the Monona Terrace. But it's 2 days full of continual training and conversations with both the Naviant team and the creators of OnBase on how you can continue to do better. So with that, we're going to go over a couple of customer examples and then I'll open it up to questions and we'll wrap up for the day. So the first customer example that I want to touch on is a commercial accounts payable solution. So we had talked a bit about how accounting departments may use OnBase and ECM for invoice processing, but really looking at the front end at capturing those invoices and other finance documents like packing slips and purchase orders that are needed to make decisions there. Pulling in all of that information early, whether it's a paper document, an email, or a fax, and then managing the process through workflow. So using workflow to route documents electronically through the organization for approvals and GL coding, as well as handling any exceptions. So when you get an invoice in and and it's a PO invoice and it doesn't quite match the price that your purchase order has, how do you handle that? Well, we can set up a workflow to manage exceptions like that within the process. We can provide access to the documents and approvals and workflows to both your AP clerks and the managers and executives that would be doing the approving and GL coding of those documents. Oftentimes, we see integrations with ERP systems like SAP. Again, I mentioned Outlook integration is one of our key integrations across every vertical and every department, as well as that mobile integration to keep those executives or managers that may be out of the office and traveling able to keep processes moving while they're not physically in the office. Oftentimes, we see reports like time to pay, or if accounting departments are able to leverage discounts, being able to live tap into those reports and monitor delays within the process, see where there may be bottlenecks and redistribute work appropriately to keep things moving, again, to get access to those discounts. And then finally, being able to store all of that information within the system along with its full document history. Within the accounting department, this audit trail and document history is critical. And we've heard from a lot of our clients that auditors actually like coming in when you've got OnBase because they know that it's going to be easier for them to do their job. The next example that I want to touch on is for the insurance industry, specifically looking at claims processing. So again, within the capture side of things, really focusing in on getting those claims documents and correspondences into the system quickly and at the beginning of the process. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, using some of that automated data capture, such as OCR, to pull information off of those documents and do some of the work that we normally would have to do by keying it into our computer. We're then able to use workflow to manage approval processes. Potentially, if a claim is over $5,000, it may need to be routed to a large claims processor, or focusing on, we've worked with some insurers that the CEO likes to touch any claim that's over $10,000. You can use document composition, again, like we discussed within the managed category, to really be able to communicate with your customers much more efficiently, and with, again, that legal language, and making sure that there's consistency across the board, regardless of who's issuing that correspondence. And then oftentimes within the claims management solutions, we see that case management is leveraged, because there's so many different types of information that come in to make that claim decision. So again, looking at potentially an audio recording of that first loss of notice, electronic documents, images that come from an accident scene, or your adjuster that's out looking at a claim, and being able to bring all of that information to one place for a decision to be made quickly. We can extend access to these solutions to your customers through third-party portals, and integrate with claim systems, again, as I mentioned, like Guidewire or Duck Creek, even AS400 applications we're able to integrate with and share data back and forth. Again, touching on that claim system integration, Microsoft Office for those document composition and other customer communication management tools, as well as the Outlook integration to pull in email correspondence and that type of thing much quicker. We would, again, have that full audit trail available here, but we could use workflow reports to check on our productivity, as well as those bottlenecks that I mentioned before, exception reports. We could even do total dollar amounts of claims paid. There's a lot of flexibility of how we can leverage the data that's within the system. And again, making sure that our documents are stored and retained appropriately, and using any sort of encryption to make sure that that information, specifically data about our policyholders, is held safely within the system. And to round out our time together, I just want to touch on our last example, which is a government agenda management solution that we've implemented for a number of different organizations or municipalities and tribal nations. Specifically looking at agenda items, capturing any agenda requests and the related documents that go around with those requests into the system, being able to keep track of your meeting minutes, again, ingesting those documents and information any way that they come into the organization, looking at paper, email, fax. We're able to then manage, using this agenda management solution, the creation and distribution of those agendas for your meetings, as well as keeping attendance for those meetings and marking any follow-up items that might need attention after the meeting as well. We can use workflow to manage those processes. You can provide access to your village clerk, folks that are going to be submitting agenda items, approvers, aldermans, and one of the things that I don't have up here is your constituents. We can also share out those meeting minutes and that type of thing directly out with what we actually call agenda or with the constituent access. We're also able to integrate with mobile devices with the Agenda to Go component of the solution, which allows your aldermen and other folks that are involved in the meeting to download the agenda directly to their device, take private notes, and interact with the agenda directly from their mobile device, as well as then being able to extend the capabilities to Agenda Online and push that information out to a third-party portal. The biggest piece from a reporting standpoint here is looking at that audit trail and making sure that we have that full document history for all of those agendas, the related documents, and the items that have come through the process. And oftentimes we see, specifically with some of the folks that we've done this with recently, they're converting from a Sire application for agenda management to OnBase. So we are able to take all of the information that they have in that old legacy Sire system and convert it into their new system within OnBase. So they have access to all of that past data and information, as well as managing the records of all of their new agendas coming forward. So just to kind of review what we did today, we talked about those 6 categories of ECM. So think about, capture, manage, capture, manage, access, integrate, measure, and store, or that chocolate muffins are in my tummy. And then again, where to start. We are always here to help you have these process discussions and understand what your options are. Our website is a really great resource to go out and understand the industry a little bit better and do some knowledge gathering. And then finally, those customer examples there. I see that we do have one question, and it looks like it's talking about multiple ERP. Oh, I've got 2. Okay, here we go. Multiple ERP integrations. So yes, we do have multiple ERP integrations, and a lot of times we do custom application integrations. From our team's perspective, we work a lot with SAP, looking at Oracle, as well as Microsoft's different ERP options from Great Plains. And then it looks like there's also asking, is there integrations for both Android and iPhones as well? We have an integration with iPads, iPhones, as well as Android devices and Windows tablets. I think they just discontinued the BlackBerry integration because we didn't see a whole lot of use case for that moving forward, but they are all custom developed within those operating systems so that the user interface is smooth and very intuitive. And another question that I just got is about cloud options and kind of moving in that direction. We see a lot of our customers starting to look at hosting solutions in the cloud, and Highland offers a number of different options for that. So we have kind of a 3 different options. There is the ability to host your solution on premise and capitalize the software purchase and own the solution and kind of manage it internally moving forward. There is the full software as a service option that allows you to pay for the software as a subscription on a monthly basis and host it within Highland's cloud services. And then the final option would be to purchase the software and capitalize the expense, but then host it within Highland's cloud services. Highland has a number of different data centers. I think they're up to 8 or 9 at this point across the world, all the way out to Australia and Europe within the United States. And generally what they would do is hold your data in the data center that's closest to you and then have a second redundant copy of your full OnBase system in a secondary data center of your choosing across the world. And that gives you the opportunity to always have a disaster recovery plan in your back pocket. I will stay on the line. If there's any more questions, please feel free to use the chat and send those to me. And otherwise, I just want to thank everybody for your time and for joining me today. I have my contact information up on the screen here. Please feel free to reach out to me directly or interact with your account manager if you have somebody that you're more comfortable with working with. We can certainly help answer any of your questions or, again, arrange some time for us to just chat about your specific solution. And it looks like somebody just asked if the webinar was going to be recorded today. They had somebody that wasn't able to join us, and it will be emailed to anybody that registered for the webinar, as well as you can certainly contact us and we can make sure that you get that recording. All right, it looks like that is the questions that I've got at this point. Again, please feel free to use my contact information if you have any other questions for us. Otherwise, have a wonderful Valentine's Day, everybody, and thank you for joining us.